Hey gang, episode 8, series 2, Resolute TV. It's still happening this week. We've got Lloyd Russell's back. Lloyd Russell is the president of the Liberal Democratic Party of Australia. We're on the same team. I don't agree with everything Lloyd says. I don't agree with 100% of what anybody says, but I do generally like the hard work Lloyd's putting in. I'm here in Resolution and the dogs are fighting the roosters and the sun's shining. It's a bloody hot day, 38 degrees. I'm sweating like a pedo at a preschool. It's bang out of order how hot it is out here, but I actually quite like it hot. That's from being in kitchens for years. So we have Lloyd Russell back. We touch on where the LDP is going, what they're doing with candidates, all sorts of fun stuff. And then our for the first time ever, we're really glad to have him. He contacted me. I'd had a few beers and I thought, you know what, let's do it anyway, because we can and we do, whatever. So I had a good time talking to a man named Jimuphy Masters. Jimuphy Masters is a documentarian. He's a DJ, among a few other things. Really brilliant guy. The only downside to Jimuphy is he's a Chelsea supporter, and we all know I'm an Arsenal guy. So, you know, he did really well to get past my chief of security as a Chelsea fan to come on in, because as we know in 2020, if you don't support the same team, you've got to hate each other. That's how it works. Nah, of course I don't hate the guy. I think he's epic. Had a great chat with him. I really appreciated his time. We'll split that up into a couple of segments, because it was a great chat, really worthwhile, and it was a lot of fun too. And I know people get confused in the political game. It's got to be fun as well, because you're dead a long time. The other big news for Resolute TV this week is we're doing a little modest expansion. Eva Destruction, Eva Pears. Eva was on as a guest in Series 1. Eva's actually coming on as a regular contributor, and she's going to have her own segments and do all sorts of stuff. So she and I are going to sit down at the beginning of episode 9 to talk about what she wants to do, how she wants to do it, and how we're going to play it. But Eva is now officially on Team Resolute TV with me, Dia, all of our regular contributors, Stephen Wells, Arlene Anger, Fist Blanco, Sparkles the Rooster. I think that's what the kid called him. I'm pretty sure the kids called him Sparkles. I don't know why you would call the big rooster Sparkles, but they do what they do. Chris Yates, all these guys are still on the team. Stefan Lavera, and we're looking at expanding our content. We're just trying to figure out the best way to do it so as to not take up too much of everybody's lives, because we're all working for a living. We're doing things. We've all got projects, and we can only dedicate so many hours a day to Resolute TV. But it's fun, and we really appreciate you guys tuning in. So, you know, give it a like, give it a subscribe, share, all that stuff that people like to do. If you don't want to like it, don't. If you don't want to subscribe, don't. And if you don't want to share, don't. If you don't like it at all, don't watch. Most people don't watch things they don't like, or I don't. I don't know why anybody would. Anyway, guys, have fun. Check out me and Lloyd. Check out me and Jimuphy. And we'll catch up next week with the amazing Eva joining us as a contributor. Thanks, guys.
Oh, pretty busy, mate, and thanks for letting me come on again, and sort of looking forward to the future one as well. So, and it's great to hear that there's, you know, even in a few days, there's been a bit of interest, because there's a lot going on with the Liberal Democrats, and up here at the moment we've done a state election, and of course not being registered up here is a little bit of an issue, but. We got in behind a couple of independents and a few sort of other areas that were supporting some of our single issues. But the last sort of month, the last 2.5 weeks, we've been focused on the Groom by-election, and mate, I'll talk about that in a fortnight's time. But when the Liberal National Party are starting to spread rumours that the Liberal Democrats and our candidate are stooges for the Labor Party, you've got to probably say that they're a little bit, let's say they're a little bit miffed. They're a little bit miffed that the new kid on the block is shaking up the show. So, but yeah, so this week, as we said there last week, it's a build on from last week. But this week is unashamedly about where we are now in the Liberal Democrats and a focus on where we want to be in the next in the next few years. And so I'm really happy that and really appreciative and thankful for you, Dean, for for allowing us to do this and be unashamedly libertarian.
Mate, yeah, I'm definitely in the unashamedly libertarian category, even though, look, and I said to somebody the other day that I didn't know what a libertarian was. I'd lived this life for many years, railing against the government. I remember getting my first paycheck and being completely offended by the fact that half of it was gone. But I didn't have any idea what a libertarian was, which I suppose will lead me into, I suppose, the first topic to touch on. What do you see being a libertarian is? How does the Liberal Democrats fit into that? So some of the conversations I've had with our American friends would say, how can you be a libertarian party if the Liberal Democrats? Why wouldn't you just call yourself the Libertarian Party? Which there's a few rumblings online about doing something like that. And there's also some rumblings about a bit of a name change. How do you see being a libertarian and what got you involved in it? I mean...
Look, fundamentally, we briefly touched on this last week, Dean, that, being a true libertarian and that sort of stuff, well, what are you? Are you an ANCAP true libertarian, or are you a classic liberal true libertarian? And you start reading the academic theory and all that stuff behind, while they're very much about free market and that sort of stuff, they're coming at things from a very different perspective. And so, it comes back to, it's a semantic argument, or semantic discussion is, what is a true libertarian? Well, let's look at the fact that the Liberal Democrats is a libertarian philosophy party. It's driven by a libertarian philosophy of small government, leave me alone. Small government, leave me alone. And our mantra says it all. We will never vote for an increase in taxes, and we will never vote for anything that's going to erode your personal freedom. And underlying on that is really about individual and community self-responsibility and self-accountability. And I think if we pare it away from from the bubble, we talk about the Canberra bubble, but there's a if we look at state governments, there's a capital city bubble for each state government. We've got to be careful that we don't create our own little bubble and just bounce around and that sort of stuff, because at the end of the day, what's our core purpose? And if we looked at it on the Constitution for the Liberal Democrats, we do only have two objectives, is to enhance and further the philosophy of the libertarian movement, i.e. freedom, small government, market-driven, that sort of stuff, and get people elected. Well, to get people elected, you need to get people's votes, and that's it in a nutshell. So, and where do we sit? I think we sit quite comfortably in that, in that wider position of the libertarian movement that takes in the ANCAPs and the classic liberals, and brings the two together based on our very clear and very well articulated principles. So that's where I see it. Is it a name issue? Well, I think it's really a narrative issue. It's a marketing issue that we've got as a Liberal Democrats party. It's a marketing issue. Marketing issue is a narrative issue. So hopefully that.
I agree. I can see where people find the confusion. When I first started, and I'm not, I didn't go through the university system studying politics. So for me, a Liberal Democrat, what the frig is that? I had no idea. I want a party that's going to protect my freedom. That's what I want to know about. Who's looking out for that? And that's when I came across David Leyonhjelm's work. And I was like, well, out of all these lunatics in Parliament, this lunatic seems to be one that I could have a beer with and find some real common ground. And that was sort of how I ended up in the party. I contacted him direct and said, hey, Mr. Leyonhjelm, this is who I am, and I want to know if you're the guy for me. And I think he said something that I'd mentioned or asked was bullshit in the email, and I went, well, that's a fair response. It's an honest response that I didn't expect from a politician. So I went further down that rabbit hole, and I went, okay, clearly I am a libertarian. I didn't know what it was. Now, I kind of have an idea of what it was, so, which is quite funny because you've got certain people who are desperate to give themselves a label, and they're desperate, and with libertarians, they want to give everybody else a label as well. I mean, it's a real carry-on thing. Humans want to identify as something. I'd like to be identified as left the hell alone most of the time. And I guess that was an interesting part of this whole thing for me, was to sort of go, well, I'm not really interested in politics as such. I'm interested in being left alone, and these buggers won't leave me alone unless I fight back. So that's where we've ended up here. So are you a big L libertarian personally, or a little L libertarian? Because I've had that question asked about which one you'd consider yourself.
Oh, mate, I don't go that deep into self-assessment, honestly. People can badge me whatever they want to badge me. I was told the other day that, that I'm probably known as a little bit of a head kicker too, and okay, I can't control what people think. All I can control, and you touched on it there as well, that with David Leinholm, when you look back, it's the legacy, and I think we've got to start thinking like that inside the party. That the party's been going for 20 years, or the guts of 20 years, early next year. So and that's why we're having our AGM in Canberra, because that's where it started. With John John Humphreys and Duncan Spender and Michael Sutcliffe and Guy Jakeman and a few like that. So look, I'm too stiff in the neck to be sort of worrying about looking over my shoulder. I'm not here. I'm not here to say, wow, it was the Lloyd Russell show. Mate, I'll move on and hail the king. The king's gone, move on. And that's exactly what I've done. That's exactly what I want to see. Is that you're in for a while. You leave it in better shape than what it was when you left, and I look at what David did, from 2007 to well, you can still say now, because he's still very well involved in the party, but a lot of people sort of look at David and say, oh well, once he walked away from the Senate, that's the end of it, and no, we can go back to Clinton Mead. He came in as a mayor, and he didn't drop off the drop into the abyss. After he was there again, so see, I think this high energy that's used in those pigeonholing bits is actually anti-libertarian, because isn't part of anti-libertarian, the non-aggressive principle and our tolerance? Well, isn't that what we should be tolerating? Big L, little L, big A, little A.
Look, and 100%, and we're not going to get votes if we spend most of our time alienating everybody because they're not as puritanical as some may be. I've been called out for being somebody called me a David Leinholm fanboy, and I went, David and I clashed for quite a period of time where I go, David, you're boring as a wet mop. I used to give him a bit of a hard time in the meetings. He probably doesn't even remember it because that's just how David is. And I go, David, your policy's great, but what the hell is wrong with you? Are you mad? And to his credit, he still came on Resolute Series 1, and he and I talk a bit, and we've learned to get along because we've got to identify massive personality differences. I'm boisterous, loud, and sort of pretty full on, and David's far more reserved in his day-to-day, personality and things like that. And somebody mentioned, that if you put my personality in his brain together, you'd probably end up with a pretty full-on sort of a result politician-wise, which I suppose there's an element of that could be pretty funny. But I was part of the faction of, and I hate the word faction, but the group of people within the party that really wanted to keep David involved, even at sort of for a little while after the election. Fair enough if he wanted to take a break, be a bit at arm's length, but there was also another group that wanted to ostracize him. And I'm like, 20 years, this man put an awful lot of his own personal time, effort, money into this party. He built up the profile to where it is a party. Without David Leinholm, we would be no better than the Australian Democrats or any of these other smaller parties. He was very, very influential. So was somebody like Peter Whelan. Peter Whelan was actually the guy who talked me into coming back for my second meeting. The first meeting I went to, I was less than impressed in Sydney. I sort of, geez, we've got a federal senator, this guy, and there were 6 people in the room. And one of them was Peter Whelan. 3 of them were sitting at the front of the table giving directives to the other 3 who were very confused and not sure why they were there. And to be fair, I sort of gradually, Peter talked me into coming back, and I got stuck right into the New South Wales branch to, at last count, after I stepped away, we get 40-odd people to do a branch meeting in Sydney. So we went from 6 when I started. So I got stuck in for a few years and gave an awful lot to the party. And from where we stepped away, myself and Keith Francis, the former New South Wales president, again, some people liked, some people didn't like, but he and I got along really well because the commitment was there. But we went from 6 to 10 people to a monthly meeting to now there's actually a culture in New South Wales around the meetings. There's 40-odd people that go to these meetings regularly, and I think that's a big step. I've also noticed some great work with Victoria, having candidates come up. There's candidates coming out of the woodwork everywhere. Queensland, is it Craig who's running now? I spoke to Rob King. Yeah. You might not be registered, but these guys are candidates who, let's be fair, if you were registered, they'd be running on the LDP banner. So, yeah, okay, there's some problems getting registered. That happens. That's life. But these, Rob came on the program before his election as a bit of a thing. I've used this as a bit of a practice ground for a lot of libertarians to kind of just practice talking on camera. And mate, there's a lot going on. I've noticed it. You're obviously helping behind the machine. What's been happening?
Yeah, look, and let's touch on a really good thing is that if you go back to around about 2006, 2007, the party was looking over the edge of the abyss, and it was dragged back. Now, when a lot of people saw that David Leinholm left, when I say, left the Senate, and then didn't get in New South Wales, people were thinking, okay, and there was pundits external. I'm not talking about internal here. There was pundits external to the party saying, okay, well, it'll fold within 6 months. Yeah. And we've got to go back to the group in behind that as well, and look at that word called legacy. There was enough people sort of holding on to the legacy and saying, no, there's a legacy here. There's a need for a libertarian-based party, and that's exactly, as I said there last week. Gabe started certain stuff. Coops went on to it, and then I'm just adding on to that. I'm just adding stuff on, and that's exactly what it is. It's about the legacy, and taking that legacy forward. So where are we at the moment? Now, you're right. We have done a heck of a lot inside the back end of the organisation, because if there was one thing, we got people in, but we didn't have an organisational structure around them. Now, that was, and which is why the whole entity was sort of run out of David's, technically run out of David's office on a laptop for so long. The same thing with Victoria. We got 2 people in Victoria, predominantly thanks to David and a few other people, elected there, and because of the group voting ticket thing. And prior to that, there was Aaron in WA, but exactly the same things occurred. Is that we've got people inside, but there's no, in Parliament, but there's no organisation around them, and that's exactly the thought process that I've taken, and a lot of people on the national executive have taken as well. Is that we do have to build an organisation. Now, when you build an organisation, mate, it is boring. It is boring as hell. It's also very taxing on the thinking, because not only do you have to worry about, the campaign, whoops, it's a campaign, there's an election on in 6 weeks' time, we better rush, do stuff, the old, let's, everything's got to be finished by 12 o'clock. It's 5 minutes to midnight, and I'm just about to come out and ask you out for your first date, and we're going to have sex on the first date, and we've all got to do it in the next 5 minutes, And I stole that off another member that told me that the other day. So please don't say that's mine. also somebody else sort of passing it on and saying, look,
There'll be a meme going around with Lloyd Russell said, you know, quotes.
Yeah. Look, look what the old fella said again, you know. So, but look, the realism of it is yes, technically the party did look over the abyss again, in November 2018 to, February, March, April 2019. But the beauty about it is we just had, the two guys in Victoria turn up. So, there was some stuff that we could work on, and we've got to give Andrew Cooper a hell of a rap for this, and look, Coops has got a well-known style, Coops has got a well-known style, but he is a darn steady hand and a sharp, pragmatic mind. And we've got to think about that. So, and yes, as I said there last week, you can't cook an omelette if you don't crack the odd egg. So we've moved it on, and in behind, we've looked at, we've looked at where do we sit with ASIC, and obviously under ASIC, where do we sit with so ASIC, as you know, is the Australian Securities Investment Corporation. So we're registered by them. We are a not-for-profit organisation, so we do have to submit to the to the regulations and standards of what they call the ACNC, or the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profit Commission. So we've had to look at that. We have to comply with the ATO, and it's just, you just have to do this stuff. It is boring, and if you're if you're a passionate academic and a passionate activist and a passionate philosopher, or a passionate politician, you don't want that stuff. You don't want that stuff. As I said there, the other day, that I ran, in the Longman by-election. I ran as number 2 on the Senate ticket. Was I a good candidate? Who knows? That's for up to others to judge. Would I make a good politician? Who knows? All I know is that, I'm not 41, I'm 61, and I think I've got a role inside the organisation as an administrator, and to position the party, onwards. And that's what I want to do, is take the last 20 years and yep, there's some good, bad and ugly. Let's just accept the bad and the ugly, learn from it, because if you don't
bad and ugly, man.
If you don't learn from the good, bad and ugly, then I don't care if you got 6 PhDs. You're as dumb as bloody dog shit. So, move on. But let's take the good, but let's also understand. And again, I mentioned this the other day, when 75% of our members are under 45 years of age, we have a responsibility to have a good organisation and a good party that can allow these people to flourish in 5 or 6 years' time. That's my driver over the next 2 years. Now, so what is going? So that's all the boring stuff. We got audited this year. We've employed we've got a proper corporate solicitor that we've got access to now, and there's still Keith as a barrister and all that sort of stuff in the background, and other legal minds inside the organisation that can give us a tap on the shoulder. But we've got something formal that's outside the party. We've got an accountant that's outside the party, and we've got an auditor. We've got an order that's pretty harsh on us. The other thing we have done is we've registered for GST, because guess what? We were literally leaving tens of thousands of dollars out of the cash flow by not being able to claim that GST stuff back, because we were paying it. We just weren't offsetting it. So that's all done now. So we've got a bookkeeper on board. We got audited this year under Clerk 9, which is an international standard, and the Australian Accounting Standards Board's, principles. And we passed very well. They did make certain comments on history, but, we've moved on. We've moved the organisation, and they could see where the organisation's been moved. And again, it's as boring as the proverbial. Now, one thing that people have said is we're becoming more consistent. Yep. Now, that's, the president's email that goes out, it goes out every month. There'll be another one go out hopefully in the next 3 or 4 days, or depending on, there is only 24 hours in a day, so I've got to run my own business as well as sort of help up into Toowoomba Groom, but it'll go out, and it's going to be looking forward, and so that's where we're positioned at the moment. Now the other thing we have done, and I mentioned it there the other day, is we've got Catherine Falconer on as our executive officer. She comes out of the not-for-profit area and that sort of stuff. So she's bringing a different level of operational management, operational governance, operational thinking, and all that sort of stuff. We've got Rob McCarthy is on the books, and we've still got Danielle there so technically we're sitting there with 2.5 FTE. That's a hell of an investment. And it is all about the fundamentals of the organisation, so we don't have to come back and redo stuff. Now, that's where we are. Now there's, we're shifting into a bigger office, so we've got these people are together. So January, I think people are going to see a lot more, because it's going to be a lot more driven out of head office, so us people on the national executive can be there from a strategy perspective. So that's the other side of it. Now, what else is happening for the organisation? Well, I think we can say, we've had four elections this year. We had Eden Monaro that you ran in, and
Eden Monaro this year, was it?
Yeah. Is that long ago, you reckon? Okay, have a look at the result, and the result is what the result is. It's what you do with the result that's really, really, really important. Then we've had the ACT, and 2 weeks later we had the flush out of the Victorian elections. Well, actually, we're going to have 5 elections this year, have a look at the ACT result. Well, let's learn from that and have a really good critic. No use protecting what we didn't say. No, what we did was right. It just was COVID or something like that. No, shift. Because look at what they've done in Victoria. We mapped out, and we have mapped out at the national executive level, all of the elections out to 2031. So we've looked at the federal, the state, and the local, and then we've actually put some key targets and milestones. Where do we want? When do we want MLCs? How should we grow our MLCs and all that sort of stuff? Now, we weren't thinking we'd get anyone in Victoria this time around. We targeted for two councillors next time. What's occurred? We've got 2 councillors in. This is big stuff. There's a shift in the voter. Now, forget about politics. There's a shift in the voter looking for another place to go. Yep. And it's not One Nation, and it's not Katter Party, and it's not the Reason Party and all that, because look at what the Reason Party and the Animal Justice Party have gone and done to the people of Victoria. Yep. They've turned their back on them, and look at what Tim and David have done. They've stuck solid to their principles, and we're reaping the rewards for that in Victoria. Now, and we had, we've got 2 elections in Queensland in a month. The 31st of October we had the state election, which we got behind Rob King, and then we've got, the Groom election, and we'll talk about that next time. So that's this year. Next year, we've got the New South Wales state election. Now we've got one sitting councillor, not state election, local government elections. Because they've been postponed for a year. And, so what's the goal there? I know Nathan and his crew are working on, they're working on multiple levels. They're working on the state one for 2023. They're working on, a federal election, which we can't be complacent about the next federal election. It could be in November next year, not May the year after. So we may only have 12 months, getting ready for that. So we're looking at those sorts of things. Now, they're working really hard, and we've given the autonomy to the states to do that, So we've got the state election in WA. Now, they're soft launching 44 House of Representative, candidates. And I've
noticed an awful lot of new names come across my desk, and I'm going, I don't know most of these people, but then I didn't know Aaron Stonehouse at one stage as well.
It-
So that
it's-
for me is fantastic.
Yeah, and from that, you'll identify, 4 or 5 that are going and saying, right, now I want to have a crack at local government or whatever, because Craig Buchanan's in local government there. Now in most local government, you've got to run as an independent, so you can't have the brand behind you and that sort of stuff, and that's fair enough. You do that sort of thing, but so it's about leveraging what we've got, and what a lot of, let's just take a pause and say, how many representatives have we got now? We've got 6 elected representatives. 3
so
in
who
local.
have we got? Name drop. Who have we got? We've got Aaron, Tim, and
No,
David. Dave Limbrick, Tim Quilty, and Aaron Stonehouse.
Yeah, so they're the three. They're the 3. So you've got Aaron, who's recontesting in March. You've got Tim Quilty, and David, who are both recontesting in November 2022. We've got Sam Gunning in the local council in North Sydney. Now he's recontesting. Now, there's a goal. Get Sam back and get another one in. And then we've got 2 brand new ones. Olga Quilty in the local government Wodonga there, and we've got Paul Barker at what's it called, the South Coast, Southern Beaches or something like that. So in Victoria. Now, these are the sorts of things. Now, in behind that boring stuff that we've done is we give the MLCs the agenda and billet, so for the national executive meeting, and they get the minutes, as does the local government. Our local, they get the minutes out of the national executive, and all state executives get the minutes out of the national executive meeting every meeting.
Yeah,
right?
which many years ago I struggled to get that out when I was on the New South Wales executive. I had a big, not an argument, but I was like, how come we're not sending minutes each way? Why don't we know what one hand's doing when the other's not? What's going on? Just transparency backwards and forwards between each other, and to make life easier.
Yeah, and let's face it, we're not ASIO. We're a minor political party that's got a gender, and gender inside people. That there's a thing, but the really big thing that I'm looking at is have a look at the cohort of people that are standing and being standing for election and that sort of stuff. Generally speaking, they're in the sweet spot of our membership anyway, between that 45 and 35 or 45 and 30-year-old. Now, that to me is showing that there is a shift throughout the organisation. It's positive because we're not recycling the same old faces all the time. We're not recycling. We're showing that there's a younger, committed group of people. Now, from that group, we're going to see people that want to pursue a political career, but I think we'll also find out that there's people that want to pursue the administrative career. And if we're going to grow, that's the really big trick. Yes, the political arm and the administrative arm need to be like that. Need to be like that, not like that, because one, if you can see that separation, more people will get behind as volunteers. More members will see that there's some professionalism in the administration, and it's I talk about legacy a lot. What's the opposite to legacy? Ego. So if you're not pushing the legacy, think about what the alternative is, and that's what outsiders are seeing inside the party if we don't look at legacy. Now, I think we're seeing people looking at legacy. So what else is on? What else is on for the party? And I'm probably taking a lot of time, but you asked the question, what's on for the party? And this is just going to be a dead set dump. It's there's a lot going on. As I said last week, mate, there's a lot going on.
Mate, that's why we put a couple of hours into it. It's because it's well worth doing, and it's a big part of what's going on. This is why we do this stuff.
Yeah. So what's the other thing that's going on? The AGM for Victoria, because they've been in the lockdown now. There's absolutely a disgraceful process that's been going on all around Australia, but more specifically in Victoria. It's it's not only an attack on private enterprise, it's a front to individuals' intelligence and individual freedom. It's just atrocious what's going on, and you know, it's trying to stifle critical thinking. And you know, we talk about, and I think I even might have mentioned it there the other day, that you know, David and Tim are showing that they're the only bloody adults in the kindergarten, you know, and let's embrace that and push it. So they've got their AGM, you know, things can happen overnight. So they're looking at an electronic voting system and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, there's four positions up on, you know, and you know, they've got a, you know, they can have up to 7 on the executive and that sort of thing. So if they want to, but you know, we've got to shift it along, and we've got to break this cycle. We've got to get this good fresh blood in that's really interesting that's really interested in moving on. You know, we're looking at you know, so, and I want to just focus on these sort of operational things a little bit today, and you know, so we've got that going on. Now they're going to then go straight into preparing for the state election, and at the same time the federal election, because we could have a federal election in November. So we're doing that now. Nathan is helping, you know, Australia-wide on all that sort of stuff as the national campaign director, and so we've got those two things going on in Victoria, and so in WA we've got that election going on, and that's the unequivocal full focus of WA at the moment, you know, and that's exactly how it should be. They're running it, they're driving it, and that's in March next year. We've got South Australia. South Australia have got a new executive in, and it's a bit more vibrant and I suppose outwardly looking, as opposed to you know the opposite to that is fairly obvious what that is. So we've got to look at these, and they are outwardly looking. They're starting to look at their social media persona and all that sort of stuff. But they're going around and looking at re-registration. Now, they've got some really good contacts, and Nathan and myself have put them in touch with some other good contacts and that sort of thing. That they'll go through with re-registration and that sort of stuff. In New South Wales, they're focusing on, you know, they're doing things in 3. You know, they're looking at the local government election. You know, there's a different nuance inside New South Wales. They've got to re-register every year. Sam Lee is just tearing his hair out on the state audit, all that sort of stuff. And you know, the other thing that we're doing in Victoria is the re-registration. I think it'll probably fall into place in the next 2 weeks. That's when we're re-registered for another 4 years. And Rob McCarthy has to have and Catherine have to have a hell of a pat on the back for that. You know, and in Queensland, you know, we've had the 2 election that we've finished. In behind the scenes, we're looking at our database and starting to align that with the help of Rob. And then we're going straight into just focus only on registration and that sort of stuff in Queensland. Now, people say, oh, you know, it's really disappointing and my heart bleeds and all that sort of stuff. You know, Queensland doesn't have an upper house, and everyone knows that you know, that's just a real downer for us. But you know, because we have just focused on the Senate, the federal Senate. And then, of course, when all those changes came in 2006 and again 2019, you go, well, God, we're never going to get a senator up either. So why should we bother too much? Local council elections, because we can stand under our brand in pretty much all of the southeastern councils under our brand. So you know, you can in the Moretonshire, you can in Ipswich, you can in Brisbane, you can in Redlands, you can in Logan, and you can on the Gold Coast. So that's a driver for us, because a lot of people, you know, I think that's and Tim Quilty said it heaps of times, you know, we should be focusing on council. Absolutely, 100% agree with him. We must be focusing on council. And that's why we're trying to get in. You know, this is our 4th go in Queensland. So if we rush it like possibly we have in the past, we're going to get exactly the same result, which is why we're not rushing it. So that's all this back end stuff that's doing it as well. Now, you know, so there is, you know, there's a heck of a lot on, and there's more and more campaigns. But there's one thing that you may have picked up that we're very much not not tolerating anymore this 11th hour stuff.
Yeah.
This 11th hour stuff, right?
Mate, I felt a lot of that when I did the first campaign they ever sort of, and when I say we ran me in, which was the Goulburn election, and I sort of wasn't really, and it was my first go at being a candidate too, so I probably wasn't as assertive as I should have been, because I'd sort of been approached, well, can we run you in Goulburn? And I sort of went, oh, me, really? I'm not the political type. I think I straddle somewhere between an activist and a I can do the politician thing, but I'm not really your cookie cutter, which is probably a good thing. And I found, I sort of went, oh, yeah, look, if you really can't find anybody better, if you can find a better candidate, I'm quite happy to take a back seat 100% of the time. I'll go and campaign for whoever is doing a good job, no problem at all. But I sort of, then there was the hesitation, and I'm sort of going, am I running or am I not? So we ended up having a 2-week lead in, which at the time was endemic of not having that backroom support, not having a good solid machine in the back area. We built a party from the top down. We had a federal senator before we had a solid administration crowd. So we're sort of now we're actually restructuring, and we're trying to get all the foundations of the party right, which makes a massive difference, And I can see the changes, and I think most of them are positive.
Yeah, look, as I said, last week, we've made some pretty hard decisions. Have every one of them been a good decision? Probably not. I would argue probably not. But at the end of the day, at least we're making decisions. We're making forward decisions. And let's face it, the penthouse suite on a high rise ain't much good if you don't build the basement first. And that's where we are, and we've done that. Now, as I said, we're not looking at the 11th hour. End of March is the WA election. Stewie Hatch and the executive, started working on this way back in May this year. They started floating the ideas and way back in December last year. So there's been a big lead in time, and these are the things that we're looking at. This is why we want to start working on the federal election. We've endorsed Gay Buckley as a Senate candidate up here, and just go out and have a crack. We'll probably endorse a couple more. We'd like to run a 3 or 4 person ticket. At the end of the day, are we going to get anyone in? But it's about visual. The other thing we're starting to find out is we've had this social media fetish. Oh, we'll just go out in social media and it'll all work. No, sorry. It's about face recognition. It's about person recognition. It's about getting mainstream media. It's about all this sort of stuff, saying, oh, we've got 300,000 reach on a Facebook post. Great. The first thing that I goes there is, how is that converted into likes? How's that converted into shares? How's that converted into members? And how's that converted into money?
And how's it converted into votes?
How's it converted into votes?
Be realistic, you can have there's plenty of people who follow Kim Kardashian because she's got a nice bum. They're not following her because she's the leader of the free world.
Exactly, so we've got to break this package, and we've got to get energetic. We've got to get energetic candidates, and that's that whole thing. Look, I've made it very well known that and I know Andrew Cooper did that we've got to move the party, that we've got that link like that in politics and administration. Now, for too long, the administration has been the politics and all that sort of stuff. If we are to grow, we've got to separate that. We've got to understand that we've got to separate it, because all of this boring stuff that you do in administration is just a distraction and not inside the bailiwick of a politician and all that sort of stuff. And nor it should be. You're worrying about making sure all your audits are right and you're doing all your financial acquittals and all that. Mate, it's boring. It's boring.
I couldn't do it. Could not do it.
But believe you me, if we don't do it, the organisation will die. And if we don't have an organisation, the politicians perish.
Yep.
Yes, the organisation flourishes with the politicians as well. That's why they're interlinked. We are a political party.
Yep.
They're not mutually exclusive, but they can't be one and the same. And yes, is it going to take a while to shift that? Absolutely, because it's a cultural change. It's a paradigm change. And you don't get there overnight. This is a 3, 4, 5-year deal, which is why we've mapped out all of the elections to 2031 at the really high level. And so this is where we are in behind, because let's face it, members, voters, volunteers need a purpose, and a purpose can only be attached to goals that are measurable.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do now, and that's what we're looking at this very early stuff. Basically, as soon as the Victorian AGM happens and we get a new executive, an update executive their only focus is on the federal election and their state election. Now, that could be November next year and November the year after, or it could be May 2022 and November 2022. But they should be working on November 21 and November 22. That's what their focus should be, which means the state politicians aren't involved in the national stuff. But there's people out of those, there's people out of that local government election that would be brilliant candidates in the Senate and House of Representatives at the federal election. And let them try
a testing ground, a practice ground. And that's what we've always sort of lacked is,
Yes.
David tripped, fell, and landed in the federal Senate. And I'm not doing that to take away from all the work that he did, but he didn't have a machine behind him. So that was one man and a handful of supporters really working their asses off to get a federal senator.
Exactly.
David and Tim and Aaron, all guys I have great respect for and love to bits in different capacities. But they've never had an active working machine. And when you've got somebody like David Leyonhjelm who put so much into it, that was when the issues with, what was he in control of? Well, was he, no, David, you need to be a politician with some really great administrators behind you. I wouldn't be able to run as a candidate if I didn't have great guys working behind me, guys and girls, working behind me, all that other stuff. Rob Cribb is a brilliant, I'm sure you know Rob.
Yeah.
During Eden Monero, he was feeding me policies and things as they were happening. Because when you're driving around the countryside campaigning, you haven't got time to be looking for all this stuff. Otherwise, you get arrested for looking on your phone while you're driving. You've got to have these people who one, you trust on principle because your principles are aligned. They're within the party machine. You've got aligned goals. You're working together. And Rob took the time, effort, and a couple of other guys, but I'll name Rob because we've worked on a couple of campaigns together. Yeah. He's not the only one, but Rob and I have now done a few together. And, if I didn't have him in the background saying, mate, what's the go on this law? Can you tell me about that? And half an hour later, I've got a list of the key points and the key factors. And I go, oh, okay, cool. This is where it fits into what we're talking about. And every candidate needs that. Yeah.
And it highlights, I suppose, where we're looking at moving to as well. And again, this is a slow process. In my mind, and look, you've got to start with a vision and say, okay, well, what do we want to be in 2031? What do we want to be in 2026? What do we want to be there? And that's, people can go, oh, it's pie in the sky. And let's face it. If you don't have a goal, and I don't care what you're doing, whether you want to be the best politician or whether you want to be the best runner or the best swimmer, or the best at what you're doing and that sort of stuff, you've got to have a goal. And if you don't have a goal, then you're never going to achieve it. And so these are these sorts of things. Now, this is what we've got to bring. We've got to bring this to the people, to our members, because if there's a goal, they can aspire and they will come up and say, hey, listen, I want to be that. Good. Yep. Put them in the environment, they can do that. And this is what I mean is I think we did stare the abyss, end of 18, early 19, but we've moved back from the abyss again. Yeah. Is there a lot more work to do? Absolutely, there's a lot more work to do. And one of the things that I envisage is I would really like to have a non-executive a non-executive campaign committee that, you know, that is now it might be that it's chaired by somebody out of the national executive or whatever, but they're not bound. They're not bound by the time constraints of being on the national executive or on a state executive or something like that. And and on there, I think we've got to have 5 sorts of people. We've got to have the policy person, you know, that can look at the research, the policy, and that sort of stuff. We've got to have, you know, a person that sort of looks at logistics and events, you know, in the areas and all that sort of stuff. We've got to have a person that looks at donations and all that sort of thing. We've got to have a person that certainly looks at volunteer management and all that sort of stuff. And then you've got to have like the project manager. Now, I'd dearly love to see that. And that's just their role. You know, they put their hands up and say, listen, this is what we want. And then we just let them go ahead and do it, and that sort of stuff. Because, you know, and I know we're small, but, you know, you've done it in business. I've done it in business. If you keep looking at the micro and saying and justifying why you're sitting here, and actually not saying, you know, I really don't want to be sitting here for the rest of my life. I want to be able to looking out over there. Well, you do. And away you go, you know, and all of a sudden, you know, because growing has pains, you know, a kid that grows from 7 to 12, you know, they've got pains in all their joints and in their legs and all that. You know, you always have growing pains. And at the end of the day, do you want to grow or not? That's the simple question. Now, what is growing? Yes, growing our elected members. You've got to grow your base first, because out of that you get candidates, which then show that they are electable members or electable people, and we go from there. And that's what I mean about this recycling. You know, if people have stood 3 or 4 times, you know, maybe we've got to sit back and go, let's learn from that and put these people up. Now, I'm not saying that, you know, that you've run 2 or 3 times that, you know, that you're on the scrap heap. You know, it could be that that's your 3 or 4.
I was getting excited there, Lloyd.
Yeah, and you know, but yeah, you know, but I just think we should be sending a really clear message to the voter that our candidates are generally speaking younger, vibrant, active people. And when I say younger, I'm saying it from my demographic. So you're a younger, more vibrant person, you know, not, you know, I'm not talking about, you know, the 55, 60, 65, 70-year-old people. You know, we should be, you know, especially over 60, you know, we should be the mentors and the, you know, the mentors and the ambassadors and that sort of stuff of the organisation, not the, I'm going to have one more go. I'm going to have one more go, you know, and you know, but there's, you know, Victoria has proven it. There is a heck of a lot of good people in there, and predominantly they're under 45, you know. Victoria, not Victoria, WA has done that in spades. You know, look at their, you know, they've got some young green people coming up in the executive that I think will be very good administrators. But look at their cohort as well. Most of their, you know, and most of their candidates are there. You look at South Australia. You know, you've got Brodie and Lisa and Ben and that sort of stuff all coming up, and they're all looking at things in a different way now. You know, and that's really vibrant. I just see that's really vibrant. I look at Queensland, and you've got, you know, you've got Wade, you've got Dave, you've got Bede, you've got Anthony, you've got, you know, Jai, you've got Tim, you know, a couple of the Tims and all that sort of stuff, you know. So, you know, and I didn't put their last names in there because I didn't want to name drop too hard. But, you know, they're all, you know, they're all under 35. You know, they're all under 35, and you know, and it's just great. And you've got the cool hands behind it as well, you know. You've got John Humphreys in behind, you know, just keeping an eye on things and having good conversations with areas. And he's developing, you know, I'm not going to release anything yet, but John's developing something that a few of us have started to bounce around that's going to look at something that's a legacy. And as I said to John, you know, 3 or 4 weeks ago, you know, there's 10 things that the organisation needs to do to shift, and I'm pretty good at 2 of them.
Yep.
The other 8, way above my pay scale, mate, you know.
Mate, and that's all of us. We all have our strengths. We all have our weaknesses. And when you watch libertarians nitpicking each other over silly things, you're sort of like, well, of course that person's not going to do that because that's not what they do. It's foolish.
Yeah, and Gabe, he took a 12 months hiatus and he just knocked on the door and said, mate, I'm ready to go again. Bingo. Within 10 days, it was all done. And he's out there, building his own profile and that, for the federal election.
He's back. To be fair, and I was the same here at the end of Eden Monero. I was pretty burned out and ready for a bit of a break. And it's taxing mentally, physically.
I look back on what Gabe did in the last 10 years, mate. I would have bloody died before he went in on his hiatus. So Jesus bloody Christ, sorry, I shouldn't say that. Better might cut that one out. The man did need 18 months off, for God, or 12 months off. He did need it, because God Almighty. So and these are the sorts of things that we're respecting, and I think that's the other side of it is we're respecting the legacy, we're respecting people's space and all that sort of stuff, and I think that's a really important thing and as I said, where are we in the journey? I think I said this last week. Where are we in the journey of change? We're probably 10% of the way.
I'd agree there.
I think if we're 10% of the way, because change takes a long time, and if we're 10% of the way, there's a lot more energy and there's a lot more stuff to go, but we've got to respect our history. We've got to acknowledge the history, and we've got to take it forward. We've got to respect people's nuances and internal stuff. But fundamentally, we have to respect the voter and the volunteer. If we think about it, if we start respecting the voter and the volunteer, we will start attracting a lot more people, and we will start to attract a lot more donors and all that sort of stuff, So,
we can't everybody with a slight difference of status bootlicker. We need to sort of go, well, come around to our way of thinking. Here's how we think. This is a little bit different, and this is too confrontational, and I'm guilty of it because that's my whole thing. I'm full on, But we've got to get better at communicating with outsiders or normies as they are, and say, hey, they're the two V's, aren't they? They're the voter and the volunteer, and if we can't understand that as administrators or politicians, well, who should we look at? And it's the person in the mirror we should look at, not outside. Not we've got to that's the introspection that I think that we should have. After that, we look outwardly. Yep.
The only time we have to do is say, how can we do this better? How can I do this better? And I'm very mindful of I know you've got a 4-hour drive in front of you, so I'm a little bit mindful of the time as well. So that's a heck of a dump, I suppose. I think what do you reckon we continue this in a fortnight's time? Because
I reckon come back in a fortnight's time. We can also get you on the paradigm shift. I wouldn't mind. I've got a bit of a plot down the track to get yourself, John Humphrey, and Peter Whelan on a paradigm shift episode as a little four-way discussion. Well, Peter was one of the originals. And I'll even invite David and see if he's interested in doing it. Sometimes David says yes to things I wouldn't have imagined, and sometimes he says no to things I thought would be a no-brainer. So
and look,
his own race as well.
Yeah, and John, mate, that guy's got a bloody big brain, John Humphreys. He's got a massive brain. He scares the hell out of me. With the brain that he's got, and he's such a forward thinker when he looks at those things, and I'm not sure we've really tapped into that well with John either, and that's one thing that that I want to do is as I said, there's 8 things that the organisation have got to do, and there's a couple of cogs, that we need the big brains of the John Humphreys and a few others like that to really get that going. And and there's some work happening behind the scenes on that. Mightn't come to fruition till early next year, and I'm not going to announce it, because then all of a sudden you're a goose if it doesn't turn up. So but yeah, there's some big brains in the organisation, and I think it's just just a simple old pragmatic fellow like me. If I can tap into those as well, I can walk away and people can forget about me, and the party's in good hands, and away we go.
Mate, we need all those varying personalities, the big brains, the solid administrators, the big personalities, the politicians. We need elements of all of it to make a political party work. It's as simple as that, mate. And, I think you're doing a pretty well bang-up job, mate. Otherwise, I wouldn't have invited you on. And I think the party's heading in a really positive direction. Not everybody agrees, but I find that they're usually the ones who are off gallivanting, making a lot of noise about things, or calling everyone status and bootlickers, as opposed to kind of going, well, how can we all work together to get people elected, which is the whole point of a political party. I have the privilege tonight. I've been speaking to this man on and off for a little while. We have some mutual friends, and I have a world of respect to this man. His name is Jimuphy Masters, and I bet your ass you probably haven't heard of him. If you haven't, you should have. Look, a very humble man, but he created a program called the Planned Illusion. It came from, obviously, everybody on planet Earth knows that the Freedom Chef and Dia Beltran are friends, as offensive and scary as she is, and vice versa, and whatever. We're co-friends. We get along really well. Jimuphy has produced an amazing series of videos called The Planned Illusion. He's also a DJ, an Englishman. I don't know about the Englishman. The Englishman stuff scares me, bro. But, mate, welcome to Resolute TV. I'm thrilled to have you. We've been sort of half talking about when are we gonna make it happen. Just so happens that it's at midnight on a fucking Thursday night. How funny a world we're in.
Best time ever. Look, it's a pleasure, absolutely. Do you know, I had visions of what you'd look like, and I was spot on.
Yeah. Big fucking bogan with a half show. My head's more show, and this is kind of new, to be fair. It's kind of new. Yeah, I don't normally have this look, brother.
You should have given me advance warning, because I would have grown mine. The funny thing is, though, you're a white guy, you've grown a black beard. I would have grown a white beard.
That'd be a good look. Fuck, do it, bro.
Do you know what I'm saying? I think, we'll do this again in 6 months. We'll get it going.
It's not going to take you 6 months to grow a beard. This was like 2 weeks. Come on.
Yeah, I'll get the old dye going as well. Basically, dye up.
Mate, thank you so much. All bullshit aside and jokes aside, I know I shouldn't say bullshit, and I keep getting sent. I'm almost censoring myself. It's ridiculous. Mate, you and I have all bullshit now that we're rocking and rolling, right? I've heard you and Dia talking on the phone, and I said to Dia one day, I said, who's that guy? Apart from the English accent that makes you stand out, he's making a lot of sense, and he's talking. Obviously, you're a very religious man, and the whole world knows that I'm sort of an atheist, but I've always got a lot of respect for religious people because I think belief's important. I don't care what you believe in, but belief's important. Mate, I said to her, I said, who's that guy? What's his story? And she gave me a bit of a rundown. Now, mate, you're an interesting character. You're a strong man. You're a proud man. You created this planned illusion. Let's just jump right in it there, because that was the thing that got my attention when I watched the first episode of that. The planned illusion. 1, what is it? 2, where's it going? 3, where does it stand now? And 4, what are you trying to achieve with it?
Okay, so planned illusion was a direct result of being in lockdown, experiencing lockdown in Melbourne, lockdown 1 and the beginning of lockdown 2. After 10 years solid of doing my own private research in the whole New World Order thing, at the beginning of the year, I warned some friends down in Melbourne that, look, some serious stuff is more than likely going to happen. Funny enough, as a precursor to 2021, and I warned people, get your affairs in order, get your family, get your resources together, and be prepared. And because they had so much respect for me, they took no notice whatsoever.
Now, all right, based on that, now I've got a group of friends that would say the same. Dean, you're fucking mad, mate. You're off your head. How do you come up with this stuff? But I started telling, and my really, really close friends will tell you that about 3-4 years ago, I started saying things are about to get fucking wild. We need to start modifying what we're doing. Start back planning. Do everything you can. And people at different levels, mate. Like it, I know it. There's a millionaire planning a doomsday bunker is very different to Joe up the road going, I'm going to stockpile some cans of baked beans in case shit goes sideways. Or based on Adelaide this week, stockpiling toilet paper. But, mate, what were the telltale signs that made you go, some crazy shit's about to happen?
That's a really good question, Dean. Really good question. 3 things. Firstly, our proximity to China. A good couple of years ago, China had the social credit system, and they were piloting it.
Hang on. Can I call you a racist for saying that about China?
Do you know what? Funny enough, I've got a really good Chinese mate over
yeah. And I've got black friends and gay friends and lesbian friends, but I'm also a sexist, racist, homophobic, mate.
Funny enough, his name's Dino as well. Chinese guy.
Yeah, right. I'm friends with Santa Claus. Yeah. But no, on that very quick topic, and I'm gonna do that to you a couple of times because, one, I know you're intellectually capable of bouncing from. But before we jump into that or flick back to, is it not racist to say the rise of China is a problem?
Absolutely not. And if you're going to, anyone who's going to make that claim that it's racist, then you've got to claim the Brits are racist against China, Americans are racist against China, and fun enough, if you're going to go down that route, Chinese are racist against China.
Mate, I agree with you. It's I don't disagree, but here's what I like to do is, one, and let's get this out in the open. You're a black man saying it.
Am I?
Shit, ring somebody. Mate, that's the shit. Look, it's a stupid thing about life, Pete Evans put a post up which makes him a racist, white, communist, fascist, I don't know, whatever nonsense. As much as I like to think guys like you and I are pretty sensible. I mean, I can say you're a black man and you can say, and you're a white guy with a shaved head who's got a fat buff head or whatever, right? That's just called very simple looking at. You know what I mean? We're looking at each other. No shit, dummy.
Absolutely.
So when people go, that's a racist thing to say, I go, that's a really fucking silly outlook. It's got nothing to do with race. It's got nothing to do with the color of your skin. You've looked at these things coming up, and it wasn't the rise of China based on you being a black man. It was you being a man.
100% being a concerned citizen of the world.
A human man who went, regardless of color, the fact that you've got a fantastic shaved head. You went, this smells like bullshit. There's something going on. So you weren't racist when you called out China.
Absolutely not. And in actual fact, the reason it wasn't even a case of just calling out China. What I saw was a test procedure that had been carried out in China. I work as a software engineer, and the simple process whenever we design software is we test it in a small controlled environment first, and then once we're happy with the results, we then push it out. Right, we roll it out. What I saw was China was testing a form of governance that was so pervasive, dictatorial, so draconian, and so dangerous to the rights and civil liberties that I thought, my goodness, if this gets rolled out to the West, we are in trouble.
Yep.
But actually,
let's kick back. You just spoke about the Chinese credit system. One of my hobbies is I try to translate between all of the intellectual population and all the people who are watching footy and drinking beer on the weekend going,
right,
what's social credit score? The fuck does that mean, right? And you and I know it because, you know, I hang out in the Libertarian Party, as you know. So I talk to people who are economists, and I also go out on my weekend and I work with people who are labourers. Where I think a lot of people get really confused is they're too busy going, well, intellectually, I'm over here, and the rest of the world just needs to catch up to me. It's like, no. We need to get the rest of the world to see what's going on. So for those who have never understood, and I'm sure there are some dummies in my audience, and that's said with all the love in the world because I'm going to get some T-shirts made up. We love dummies. But what is a social credit score, mate? I mean, I know what it is. Tell us. What are the Chinese doing to people that affects their social credit score?
Okay, so it essentially, and as simply as possible, it is the ultimate in surveillance and control of every aspect of a human being's day-to-day life. So and the way they do it is using your social media activity, your health records, criminal, banking, you name it. Anything.
Is it true that if your social score descends, your price of fuel, as an example, rises?
Well, essentially, that's the way it is. But the way that the credit score is worked out is what they do is they collect everyone's digital data, and they work out an average score for the whole country. And then your rating is based on the country's average score. And you're absolutely right. If you've got a score that's below a certain level, then you are denied certain rights and liberties, or certain services are restricted from you.
And here's why I say it the way I do, Jimuphy, right? And as I just mentioned, I speak to some really intelligent people. You're an intelligent man, super intelligent man. I know labourers. I know people who lay brick for a living, or crop fields, or whatever they're doing. You know, really valuable work that matters, right? Actual tangibly matters. A bureaucrat will tell you how fucking important they are, and they can't tell you what they do. You ask a bricklayer what I do, I build people's houses. You ask somebody who's cropping a field what they do, I create food for the world, right? But if you talk the way you just did, they go, fuck is this guy talking about? How does this affect them? No, mate, they do it. And I've discovered this through my experiences with the Libertarian Party, right? Really smart guys, fucking brilliant smart guys. And their language is up here because they're university educated. How do we explain to blokes who are, and I like to think I walk the line between this because I've had a very exciting and an interesting life, right? But I come from a very small country town. How do we explain to a guy who was essentially a brickies labourer that down the track they want to turn around and say to him, if he smokes cigarettes, which I don't smoke cigarettes, I don't really like it, but you know what? If you want to do it, do it. None of my business. And if you turn around and say Scott Morrison's a prick, or you say Bill Shorten's a prick, or Anthony Albanese's a prick, all of a sudden your petrol is going to get more expensive. How do we explain this to these people? Because I think that's the missing link. That's what the government uses to keep guys like you and I separated from the people of the voting public. If the voting fucking public realised that there was a possibility that them sitting around smoking cigarettes and drinking beers in their backyard and saying Scott Morrison's an arsehole would all of a sudden make their petrol more expensive, I think we'd get a different result in this country.
You know what? That's a really good question, and it's slightly tricky to answer because what was tested in China is nothing compared. It was literally the baby brother to what we actually have here. So just to backtrack, at the beginning of the year, my biggest fear was, what if this system comes over to the West? How's it going to affect? Well, it's going to affect us in a really bad way. So essentially, what it would mean, this is what I was thinking, it would mean, okay, that things like not having the same political ideas as the mainstream or the government, that could mean that you would drop a few points. Now, what would that mean? Let's look at it from this point. And this is the best explanation. Let's say to live in your area, you need to have 80 points, right?
Yep.
But let's say that if you're caught talking bad about the government, you lose 20 points.
Which most people where I live generally call politicians liars, thieving, and bastards every day.
Right. So my biggest fear was I'd be on my way back from work, talking to someone in, I don't know, in a service station behind me, right? So I'm talking to someone in the service station saying, mate, the bloody government, this, that, and the other. Behind me is a government agent or flipping, you know, a camera with a microphone or whatever else. This picks up what I've just said. That audio goes back to the central database, and immediately, and I've seen this happen. I've seen this happen on some of the YouTube channels from people in China. The information's gone back to the central office. Bam, deducted 20 points, and that essentially has meant for them, or they would charge, as you say, more for gas or whatever else. For the purpose of this,
you can't get rent.
Right. For the purpose of this exercise, I've just been docked 20 points. So now I've gone from having 90 points to now 70. I'll go to my house, right? I'll go to put, say, the key in the door, and let's say like it's a digital key or whatever else. Doesn't open. I'll look at my phone to find out what's happened. Sorry, mate. You've now got 70 points. You're 10 points lower than what you need to be to live in this area. That absolutely scared me to death. Yeah. And I thought, well, you see, and I knew that the infrastructure was in place, like all the surveillance stuff that was happening in Australia and around the world. I knew that all these things were in place to make it happen. But in all fairness, I thought we'd still be a good couple of years off. And in any way, any sign of it, and we would push back. We're not like the Chinese. We definitely wouldn't stand for it. But of course,
well, Australians have spent, well, fuck, my entire lifetime going, the Chinese, the Japanese, they're weak. They would never, they haven't got the balls. Rah, rah, rah.
Well, we all did, though. We all did. So did the Brits. We all did. Listen, I did. But you know something? These people, and you've got to understand, it was Google and Facebook, they were responsible for building that system for China. They knew exactly what they were doing. They basically knew that that was nothing compared to the real system that was going to get rolled out, COVID-19. You see, COVID-19, do you see what I'm saying? COVID-19 is the production rollout of what was the social credit system on steroids.
How fucking embarrassing. Now, you and I on camera before. Now, I spent a couple of years in London, mate. I've seen some rough and tumble areas of London, and I loved it. No, I didn't go, oh, I want to live here forever, but I had such good experiences there. And what's going on currently in Australia worries me greatly. Yeah, I'm not a new father, right? I've been a father for 7 years. I've been a dad. I've had progeny for 7 years, and me and his mother had an awful lot of work to do. We had a lot of work to do, and I'm not going to say a negative word about her. But it was a tough time, and we've recently the once and future king has arrived, so to speak. You know what I mean? My boy is here. And I sit there, and people have said to me, "Well, now that you've that's all sorted, you need to start behaving yourself." Like, I mean, there'll be ramifications, there will be repercussions, there will be, fallout, bullshit, whatever. I couldn't sleep at night, and This freedom gene in me, this desire to be independent and strong, it's innate. Wasn't taught. I mean, Dad taught me some stuff, of course, but this is innate. This is it's my being. Is leave me alone. I can run my own shit. Now, if anybody thinks for 1 minute that my son being close is going to make me weaker or less capable of defending the realm, so to speak, they're sadly mistaken. I'm going to fight harder because I want my boy to have a free society. I want him to be able to make decisions. I want him to be able to win, lose, draw, fail. Failure is one of the best things in life, mate. Now, my question for you, the next one that I'm going to throw at you, because why not? It's Resolute TV. This is what we do. If I don't know how many children you have, I don't really know. If you were to have children tomorrow, if you don't already, if you do, well, then you can answer this fairly well. Does that make you want to comply more and become more subservient and part of this beast, or do you really want to fight harder on their behalf? How do you see it?
That's another good question. And I've been asked that question from other people as well regarding their situation. Look, my answer is this. You have got to stand up for rights and civil liberties, because you are, for all intents and purposes, you're the representative for the human race at this point in time. And the youngsters, they're looking up at them for leadership. Look at this great country, Australia. Think about the diggers. Think about the sacrifices that they made for you to be here. Even for me to be here, for that matter.
Yeah, fuck yeah. Oh yeah.
All right, let's have it right. Okay? And though the powers that be, they want to suck out that life, that the ability to sacrifice yourself. They want to emasculate all countries so that there are no men who will say, I want to die for this cause. I don't give a damn. All right? So my thing is, do I want my sons to see me with my pants down, looking up and saying, sorry, mate, I've done everything you've said. I've put the face mask on, please don't hurt me? Or do they want to see me knocking a few flipping tins off, going down, being killed for my right, for their right. You understand me? So I'm saying to each and every, but at the end of the day, that's the decision that you've got to make. You see, other people are going to make the decision, right, because they're scared that the situation isn't that bad. You understand me?
Oh, I understand you. I want to make them understand you. I fucking agree with you, brother.
The ones who wear the face masks, the ones who are complying, I'm going to say this: they're not that stupid. They're just fucking cowards. That's what it is. They've been emasculated. The life's been taken out of them. You're fucking scared. That's what you are.
They are scared. And you know what? There's no shame in being scared. The question is, when you're scared, who are you going to go to protect you?
You know, a good point.
Oh, mate, fuck. Oh, look, I have this fucking, my brain does weird shit, right? There are intellectuals who hang up out over here in the intellectual sphere, and there are political people, and fuck, mate, I'm a bogan Aussie from a small country town in regional New South Wales, and Dia always gets mad because she goes, sometimes you mention where we live in fucking videos, and I go, bring them. I don't care. But, the point being is the average Joe, the average fucking Australian man, right? And you and I discussed this off camera. Dan Andrews is going to get fucking elected by a landslide next election in Victoria, and I'm going to cry myself to sleep. He's going to do it.
Please tell me that's not true.
Please tell me I'm wrong. I want the Victorian people, the Victorian voting public, tell me I'm fucking wrong. Please vote anyone but Dan Andrews just to prove that I'm an asshole, and I'll be really happy, right? That guy's going to fucking walk in the door. He's going to walk in the door. They're fucking, stand with Dan. He's saving us. He's keeping us safe. It's fucking nonsense. Absolute bullshit, right? Anastasia Palaszczuk proved it. The Sheila, what's that? Fucking Ardern in New Zealand proved it, right? The woke bullshit sells. It sells. Now, it's only going to sell to a point. There's only so much poverty people are going to tolerate before they all of a sudden go, this is bullshit. The Sheila wearing the face mask and the veil and whatever Ardern wore when the massacre happened in New Zealand, it was a fucking horrific thing, right? Everything about it was wrong. Everything. There was nothing about that was right. Not one thing about that stood up to task. From the fucking shooter to the political behavior afterwards, it was all completely wrong. Everything on that level was wrong. She was wrong. She should never have behaved like that. He should never. Obviously, everything he did was fucked. But the people responded and she got re-elected. And the New Zealanders allowed a certain amount of gun laws to change because you can't have lunatics running around shooting people in mosques. Now, the only little bastion I have of comfort in my brain currently is the fact that the Americans still have a fucking lot of guns. Oh yeah, when I say the Americans, I mean Uncle Joe over the road's probably got a tank parked in his backyard going, I'll fuck you up. Game on. That's the one thing that gives me a little bit of hope in this fucking world, because let's be fair, mate, you've got Sadiq Khan running around London fucking banning everything. The knife crime's fucking off the chart, brother. And by the way, who do you support in the football?
Well, you're going to tell me you're an Arsenal fan now, aren't you?
Listen, if you and I are going to discuss the abilities of us to defend the free world and try and take some of it back, we've got to accept a little bit of the fact that fucking, didn't you say you're a Chelsea fan? we got to smile while we're doing this, bro. You know,
a little dicky bird told you exactly.
Mate, but
I am indeed a Chelsea fan, true blue. Yes, indeed.
Chelsea what? Chelsea. Yeah. People are going to think this is fucking mad. You've got two blokes here who understand English football. They understand Australian politics. They understand get downs, lockdowns, bullshit. And here we are having a good time. Mate, I know I keep going off on tangents on you. I'm giving you a hard time here tonight.
That's all good. It's all good.
Mate, I do it, one, because I do want the program to be light-hearted enough, i.e. we laugh about football, where the average Joe, somebody who's not sitting there thinking about what Klaus Schwab's doing in his back office, right? And you and I both, we'll get onto him in a minute, right? And people go to me, oh, man, I've had people when I've run for elections go, you need to modify your style so you'll get elected. And I'm going, I don't fucking want to get elected. I want to wake up the masses. That's a different sport, dummy.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this particular episode of Resolute TV. Remember, if you want to support us, we offer you t-shirts, hemp products, and we even have a phone number. And just be sure to like, subscribe, and share it around. Bye.